Good evening, I'm Faye Kwan. Our top stories for tonight. Donald Trump defends Israeli strikes on Gaza, saying the ceasefire deal holds. This as South Korea and the US finalize a trade deal to lower auto tariffs to 15%. That and more coming up on AWANI International. US President Donald Trump says the US brokered ceasefire in Gaza remains intact, even after Israel launched airstrikes that killed at least 104 people following the death of an Israeli soldier. Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump defended Israel's actions and insisted nothing will jeopardize the ceasefire.
No, nothing's going to jeopardize. You have to understand, Hamas is a very small part of peace in the Middle East, and they have to behave. They're on the rough side, but they said they would be good, and if they're good, they're going to be happy, and if they're not good, they're going to be terminated. Their lives will be terminated, and they understand that.
Israeli planes struck multiple targets in Gaza, including a refugee camp, a residential building, and a vehicle in Khan Yunis, after Israel accused Hamas of violating the ceasefire agreement. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said he had ordered powerful attacks in response. Hamas denied responsibility for the attack in Rafah and said it remains committed to the truce. Turkey has condemned the latest Israeli strikes, calling them a breach of the agreement and urging world leaders to ensure Israel's compliance. The ceasefire, brokered by Washington and in place since October 10th, was meant to end 2 years of conflict between Israel and Hamas. However, the strikes mark the deadliest escalation since the ceasefire took effect earlier this month. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump and South Korean President Lee Jae-myung have reached a final agreement on their long-delayed trade deal, lowering US tariffs on South Korean exports to 15% from 25%. This agreement was sealed earlier today following bilateral talks between the two leaders on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Gyeongju.
The latest deal clarifies outstanding details from a July framework agreement that initially reduced tariffs but left auto exports subject to a 25% rate. The new terms now align South Korea's auto tariffs with Japan's 15% rate, while semiconductor exports will face levies more favorable than those imposed on Taiwan. The agreement is seen as a major breakthrough after months of deadlock over investment terms and tariff structures. Seoul has also agreed to invest $350 billion in the US, including $150 billion through shipbuilding cooperation led by South Korean companies.
China's foreign ministry confirms President Xi Jinping will be meeting US President Donald Trump in South Korea this week. It is the first official confirmation from Beijing after the White House initially announced plans for the meeting. Now, the ministry said the two leaders will meet in the port city of Busan on Thursday, shortly after Xi arrives for the APEC summit. It would be their first face-to-face meeting since Trump returned to office in 2025 after reimposing heavy tariffs. They last met in person in 2019. Trump said he expects the US and China to strike a good deal, adding that discussions would cover lowering tariffs imposed over the fentanyl crisis and NVIDIA's flagship Blackwell chip. In preliminary talks held in Kuala Lumpur over the weekend, Beijing reportedly agreed to defer new export controls on rare earths for 1 year, likely in exchange for Washington freezing its latest chip export restrictions. We'll be back with more after the break. Stay tuned.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. Malaysia avoids potential tariffs of up to 100% by signing the Malaysia-US Reciprocal Trade Agreement. according to Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz. He warns that such increases would severely damage Malaysia's export sector, leading to business closures, job losses, and economic hardship for Malaysians.
Sekiranya perjanjian ini tidak segera dimeterai, Malaysia berhadapan dengan risiko kerajaan Amerika Syarikat akan menaikkan semula kadar tarif kepada asal iaitu 24% atau kadar pada yang jauh lebih tinggi, 30%, 40%, 50% ataupun mungkin 100%. Kita tahu Amerika Syarikat mampu bertindak sedemikian dan telah dibuktikan di dalam rundingan dengan negara-negara lain. Jika perjanjian ini tidak dimutamatkan, besar kemungkinan kadar tarif akan menjadi lebih tinggi dan sekaligus akan menjejaskan daya saing ekspor Malaysia ke pasaran Amerika Syarikat. Siapa yang akan menanggung beban ini nanti? Siapa yang akan menanggung rugi dan gulung tikar? Syarikat kita juga. Ya, siapa yang akan kehilangan kerja dan punca pendapatan? Rakyat Malaysia juga.
Under the new agreement, Malaysia will open its market to US products such as chemicals, machinery, vehicles, and agricultural goods. In return, the US will maintain a 19% reciprocal tariff on Malaysian exports, with some products enjoying zero tariffs. Tengku Zafrul also dismissed claims that the agreement undermines Malaysia's economic sovereignty or forces the country to comply with US trade sanctions, calling such allegations a distortion of the facts. He said critics had misunderstood Article 5.1, which some claimed obliges Malaysia to mirror US trade restrictions and sanctions against other nations. Zafrul clarified that Malaysia is only required to act when both countries share common economic or security concerns, stressing that if an issue affects only the United States, Malaysia has no obligation to follow suit. While the terms of the Malaysia-US trade deal may appear to favor Washington, economists say it's not all bad news for Malaysia. In fact, Doris Liu, an economist specializing in Southeast Asian development, believes the agreement could benefit Malaysia in the long run.
Okay, so I see the pros for Malaysia in this. Firstly, as I mentioned, the legally binding agreements, which then shields us from any uncertainty that comes out of the Trump regime. So these are actually very critical in terms of any policies or investment certainties for our both for our domestic industries and for foreign companies that want to invest in Malaysia, particularly US-based companies. They provide a bit more certainty on where the relations between those two countries are. Second, it also signals certain kind of strategic alignment with the US, deepening cooperations in a few areas like semiconductor, in tech, in agriculture. In a way, it may anchor some supply chain and investment flows between the two countries. Of course, while this agreement does provide significant preferential market access to US goods, so some of the industries listed here are chemicals, machinery, metals, dairy, horticulture. So these actually creates a lot of commercial space for US exporters, and this may create some pressure points for the domestic producers. But that said, right, this does not necessarily mean that we are at a loss here, because US products first, if it's a similar quality with the Malaysia locally produced products, then they may still struggle with pricing mechanisms. So it really depends on the market mechanism, how competitive they can be, even with this preferential access. And second, with Malaysia already still imports a large share of food from other countries, this actually gives us broader supply choice. So this is not a structural harms. Third, I think that in terms of imports from the US, we can look into more high technologies kind of imports. Some of the things listed were like data centers, innovation related imports that Malaysia can adopt, can import from the US to upgrade our existing supply chain.
In other news, Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi tells US President Donald Trump that banning imports of Russian LNG will be extremely difficult, adding that such a move could hurt Japan's economy and benefit China instead. The comments come as the US steps up pressure on countries still buying Russian energy, including Japan, to halt purchases amid new sanctions against Moscow's oil industry. During their meeting on Tuesday, the Nikkei Business Daily reported that Takaichi told Trump a complete withdrawal from Russian LNGs would only allow China and Russia to grow closer, adding that Japan's energy needs must be taken into account. Russian LNG currently accounts for about 9% of Japan's total imports, with companies Mitsui and Mitsubishi holding stakes in the Sakhalin 2 project. Tokyo has already boosted US LNG purchases to diversify supply sources, while continuing to import small amounts of Russian oil under a sanctions waiver that expires in December. In Southeast Asia, estimates indicate that $200 billion per annum in investments for renewable energy and energy-efficient measures are needed by 2030. Without urgent policy intervention to drive significant investments, the region is at risk of missing its energy transition goals. Vanashe joins the discussion from Singapore International Energy Week.
I'm reporting from Singapore International Energy Week SEW 2025, where global energy leaders are gathering to shape the future of energy. At the Singapore Arena High-Level Forum, discussions focused on how to finance the energy transition, from building investor confidence through stable, transparent policies to de-risking projects with innovative and blended financing models. IRENA's Director General Francesco La Camera says strong partnerships between governments, the private sector and international bodies will also be key to driving renewable investments across the region.
The most important thing is to build an environment that is conducive for receiving foreign investment. And we need also action from the government and the intergovernmental entities, also like ARENA, to try to facilitate the matching between project and funding. But this is what we have been talking together, and we also hope that this initiative for Southeast Asia will facilitate building plan that are consistent with the reducing of the emission requested, and plan that also contain element for building a good pipeline of projects, and then bringing this pipeline of projects to the bankability. These are the steps that are needed to make things happening, and hopefully in the shortest time possible.
La Camera also highlighted the formula needed to transform ASEAN's energy landscape, from improving grid infrastructure to building human capacity.
One is the infrastructure. It means that we need the grids that are interconnected, flexible, and balanced among countries and domestically. We need a market that is designed for renewables. What I mean, for example, short-term contracts are not the best option for renewables. We need long-term contract. And long-term contract ensure a very low cost if you compare with other technologies. And as I told you today, renewables in more than 90% of the cases is more convenient than the cheapest coal plant. The third area is we mentioned the human institutional capacity. Human, that means reskilling all the workers that will transition from the fossil fuel sector to renewables, and also for build curriculum for professionals that serve the new system that is coming.
With the right policies, investments, and collaboration, ASEAN's clean energy shift could not only reduce emissions, but also enhance the region's energy security and economic resilience. I'm Fana Sheikh reporting from Singapore. Stay tuned for more only on AWANI International.
Now that report wraps up AWANI International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching and good night.